You know what's funny is that everybody says they want the money. They want the $10,000 a month, the $50,000 a month, the funded payout, the penthouse, the car, the freedom, whatever it might be. There's nothing wrong with wanting those things. Because I want those things too, but I realized something recently, and it's that people are measuring the wrong thing. Like people will say they want all this stuff, but they won't actually act on what needs to be done to do it. And I think that's why so many people stay frustrated and in the same situation because they wake up every day thinking about an outcome that they don't actually control. They think about it, but it's like you can't control whether the trade wins. You can't control whether somebody buys from you. I can't control whether a video goes viral. I don't know if this is gonna go viral. I don't know if this is gonna be stuck at 5 views. I can't control whether somebody follows me by watching this video. I can't control whether I get a payout this month because I can't control any of that. So why should I spend all day obsessing over the things that I can't actually control? Why would I tie my emotions to things that are literally outside of my control? And yet that's exactly what most people do. They wake up, they check their bank account, their followers, their views, their sales, their analytics, and they check their payout dashboard and they're constantly just checking the scoreboard, but they're barely even playing the game. And that's something I've been thinking about a lot lately is that when I look at people who consistently win in any area of life, they all seem to have one thing in common, and that one thing is they're obsessed with inputs, not outputs, but inputs. The trader's obsessed with the execution, the athlete's obsessed with training, the business owner is obsessed with activity, the creator's obsessed with creating. They're not sitting there all day staring at the result, they're focused on the actions that then create the result. And I think that's one of the biggest mindset shifts that I've had recently. And I've stopped asking how much money can I make, but I've started asking what actually creates that money. What creates that figure of whatever it might be that I want? What input can I put in consistently to eventually get that outcome? Now, let's use a real world example. Let's say somebody wants to make $75,000. Now, cool, that sounds great. Like, who wouldn't want 75 grand? But what are you supposed to do with that info of wanting 75 grand? Okay, like now what? How many perfect trades is that? How many sales calls is that? How many offers is that? How many videos is that? How many conversations is that? How many reps is that? Because money doesn't magically appear. Money's the byproduct. Money's the scoreboard. Money's not the actual game. The game is everything that happens before the money. And that's where I think most people get stuck. Most people get stuck because they're looking at the scoreboard instead of the plays. Imagine a basketball player. He walks into practice every single day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, maybe even Sunday, 7 days a week. And instead of practicing, he just stared at a picture of a championship trophy. Do you think he's actually going to get that championship trophy? Like he talks about winning, he thinks about winning, he dreams about winning, but he never actually practices. Everybody would think he's insane, right? No one sees him play. He's never played in an actual game. He gets no playtime at all because he's just fantasizing about all of these things because he's not actually putting in the input that gets that output. People become obsessed with the trophy, but they neglect the reps that they have to put in. So let's reverse engineer things. Let's say that you close 10% of your sales calls. Okay. That means every 10 calls produces one client. Now, if one client is worth $2,500, then 10 calls equals $2,500. Now, suddenly every call has value. Not emotionally, but mathematically. That's a huge difference because now you're no longer asking, how do I make $2,500? You're asking, how do I get 10 quality calls? That's a much better question because that's something you can actually control. You can't control how much you're gonna make, but you can control how much input you put in, how many calls you book. Okay. So now let's say your strategy has positive expectancy. Let's say you know that over a large sample size, following your rules makes money. Well, then every A plus setup has value, not emotionally, but mathematically. Every correctly executed trade becomes a rep. Every rep becomes data. Okay, every piece of data moves you much closer to the outcome. And that's when I realized something that completely changed the way that I actually look at my goals. Okay, the goal is to stack so many correct inputs that failure becomes statistically awkward. Now think about that. I heard that quote. I don't know who it was by. I heard it at my graduation from high school. The goal is to stack so many correct inputs that failure becomes statistically awkward. Not impossible, awkward, because nothing is guaranteed. But there comes a point where not getting the result. Think about somebody who follows their diet perfectly. trains consistently, gets enough sleep, stays disciplined for an entire year, would it be impossible for them to make progress? No. It'd be weird if they fucking didn't. Think about somebody who studies every day. They take notes, they take all the homework, they do all of it consistently, they show up consistently for years. Would it be impossible for them to improve? No. It'd be fucking weird if they didn't. Now apply that to every other aspect of every other thing that you've ever wanted to achieve. Business, sales, trading, content creation. If somebody gets on thousands of sales calls, improves every single week, studies objections, refines their offer, creates content daily, makes them offers consistently, would it be impossible for them to make money? No. It'd be fucking awkward. At some point, it'd feel fucking strange if they weren't successful. And that's because they stack too many correct inputs. Okay? Trading is the same exact way. If somebody follows a profitable model, protects their risks, waits for quality setups, reviews their mistakes, learns from losses, executes consistently for hundreds and hundreds of trades, could they still fail? Sure, anything's possible, but eventually not becoming profitable starts feeling awkward. Okay? Now that's my whole point because they stack too many correct inputs. And honestly, that's how I've started looking at my goals. I'm not trying to force outcomes anymore. I'm trying to earn them through reps, through execution, through consistency, through inputs, through the input that I put in to my work. Because success, the more I think about it, the outcome is actually not where the power is. The power is in the input. That's where you actually build and get to that point where you want to be at. The outcome happens later. The process happens now. The process is controllable, but the outcome is correlated with the input that you put in. Okay? And that's where all the leverage is because I started asking myself a different question. I started asking myself, how many perfect reps can I stack? Okay, instead of asking how much money do I want to make, I started asking how many perfect trades can I stack? How many sales calls can I stack? How many pieces of content can I stack? How many conversations, days can I stack? Because that's the real game, not money, not followers, not views, not payouts. It's the reps that you put in because the reps are what create everything. And honestly, I think that's what actually feels freeing because if you're focused on outcomes, you're constantly stressed. You're constantly emotional. You're constantly wondering whether it's working, whether you're actually ever going to get to that point because no, you most likely won't because you're so focused on the outcome that you're never going to be putting in that time to actually executing those reps. Okay, when you actually focus on inputs, that's when every day becomes winnable because you can control your effort. You can control your execution. You can control whether you showed up. And after a long period of time, after a long enough horizon, those small actions start compounding into something huge. And that's why I genuinely believe that people who win, they aren't always the most talented. A lot of their time, they're simply the people who stayed consistent long enough. They stacked enough correct inputs for a long enough time without quitting, without getting distracted, without becoming emotional, until eventually success ran out of places to hide. And I think that's the mindset I'm trying to adapt moving forward, is that I need to stop staring at the outcome and instead reverse engineer it, figure out what creates it, figure out the inputs, the reps, and then become obsessed with those instead of the output. Because at this point, if you stacked all these inputs together, it'd be awkward if the output isn't what you wanted it to be because you put in those reps, you put in all the time and energy into actually focusing on what matters, that you stop worrying about the outcomes. You actually get stuff done. You play the actual game. And that's all. Stop focusing on the outcome and focus on the input.